The Leeds mission is what the English people would call the North. The Leeds mission borders on Scotland at the top, and at the bottom, it's just a little bit north of Nottingham. So it's actually, I think, the biggest geographically in England. It's a pretty big area, although a lot of it is like countryside, and there's some moors and kind of places to go out and hiking and walking around. But they have some decently big cities, at least for England. Big cities are like York. I think York was the only city that I'd heard of before my mission. I don't think I really even knew where Leeds was, or that it even existed, but it does, and it's great. So there's big cities like Sheffield, Newcastle, and yeah, that's, I guess, a little bit about generally what England's like up there. The weather, I served on the pretty close to the coast for a lot of my mission, on that east coast, and it can be pretty windy sometimes, actually. Actually, some days it'll be super, super windy, and actually, a couple weeks ago was the only time that it's ever been as windy as England. There's some big wind or something in Provo, but it can get really windy. It can be rainy, but really it wasn't as rainy as I thought it would be. It's always the stereotype that England is so rainy, and it rained sometimes, but it wasn't every single day. There were some days where it didn't rain, and something that's kind of funny is there was this kind of rain that the missionaries called the mist of death, because even if you had an umbrella, there's no way that you're going to avoid it. It's like kind of like a mister machine that you might have used, where it makes mist. I had those when I was playing soccer when I was a little kid, when you're tired and you just spray mist on your face, and it's kind of nice. It kind of feels like that, where it's just these really small pieces of rain, and they're kind of coming at you horizontally. So there's pretty much nothing that you can do to avoid it, but it's not that bad. You kind of get used to it, and it was pretty good. In terms of the food, there are some unique foods actually in the north. They actually, in this one zone, funnily enough, in the Billingham zone, they have this food called a parmo, which is like a big piece of chicken that's covered in breading. Is that what it's called? It's breaded chicken, and then it's fried, and then you put the special sauce on it and cheese, and then you have little sauces that you dip it in and stuff. So it's basically just a big piece of fried chicken, but it has like its own special taste to it, and it's super good. I think at least all the elders liked it. I think some of the sisters weren't. They're probably more healthier than the elders, but we liked it a lot. I ate a lot of parmos, and I definitely miss a good parmo. Something unique as well to our mission is some of the accents. I mean, we have the Yorkshire accent, which I can't really do a good imitation of the Yorkshire accent. But there's kind of different, variants of it. I mean, Sheffield has its own Yorkshire accent, and Leeds and Hull, and as well, there's even some other accents like the Teessider accent by Billingham and Middlesbrough. I served in Middlesbrough, so that was really cool. And then there's also the Geordie accent, there's a city next to it called Sunderland, and they're called the Mackhams, and they have a pretty similar accent. They don't think so, because they're kind of rivals with the Geordies, and it's kind of a funny long story. But anyways, the Geordies have a really interesting accent. I had never heard anything like it before I came to the mission. It's so interesting. Like they say "aye aye" just like a pirate, and they have this really cool accent when they talk. And I even remember one experience actually where I was at this restaurant called Nando's. It's kind of like a Portuguese chicken kind of place. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but Nando's is great. And the person that was at the counter, she had the strongest accent. And I was trying to order stuff, and she was asking me like what part of the chicken that I wanted, if I wanted a chicken breast or a chicken thigh or something like that. But I honestly could not understand her. It was such a thick accent, and that was one of the only times that I really could not understand an English person because of their accent. And so it was pretty funny. At least in retrospect, she was kind of frustrated in the moment, but I had to ask her 3 times or so to, say, well, sorry, what did you say again? And so, and it was just like a simple question, like I said, of, which part of the chicken do you want? But I could not understand her. But yeah, it was great. I love the North. Sometimes it gets a bad rap from people in the South because the South is so refined and so cultured, but the north is great. I love it. I love the people there. They have some beautiful countryside in between the cities. I mean, they have some, big cities that kind of have that urban feel to it, but there's a lot of countryside surrounding it. And especially if for missionaries that serve in the villages up there, there's a lot of, smaller towns or villages that sometimes people will get to. And it's just beautiful. They have such nice countryside. It's so green, the rolling hills. It's a unique sight. And especially I love it in the spring when it's just rained and everything is so green. It's just, I don't know how to describe it other than that it's really green and it's just really beautiful. So I really miss that about England for sure.
If you remember, the first missionaries of this dispensation were sent to England back in the day. And so the English members have great pride in knowing that they were the first area that missionaries were sent to. In fact, in my mission, though the missionaries started up in Preston, the church headquarters or the mission headquarters were established down in London. So we kind of take pride in saying that, our mission was the first mission in the church. The Manchester missionaries might claim that too, but the headquarters were in London. But missionary work's been there forever. And there's a lot of strong members because of it. There were so many members that had family rooted in the gospel and were just so strong, and so many converts that were really strong as well. But the church has a long history in England and especially in the London area. Right now in the London mission, there are about 8 stakes, each with about 5 or 6 wards. And the church is strong. There are about 180,000 members in England as a total. I can't remember how many in the London area in those 8 stakes. But 4 of those stakes, one's directly in London, 3 are kind of around the outskirts of London, and then 4 of the stakes are out up into the Norfolk area, down into Kent, out into Essex. So there's a few stakes that are kind of surrounding. One in the, I served in Cambridge, which is kind of up close to Northampton. There's a Northampton stake as well. Cambridge is in the Ipswich stake. But a lot of good areas. There's a countryside of England. You get the coast. You get a lot of the coast, and you also get central London, which is where I served as well. And it's just a great place to be. There's so many different cultures. One of my areas was predominantly African. Most of the members were from Ghana or Nigeria, and that was almost like another culture shock. Coming to England was very different, but then going to my ward was in East London, and it was awesome. I learned so much, and I gained so many friends, and just learned a lot more about people and how great people are. But that was one of the strongest wards I've been in. Just awesome to see people of a different culture living in England and worshiping the same way I worship. That was a really cool experience as well.
The thing about the England-Manchester mission is we're called the cradle of the restoration. We're the most blessed mission on the face of the planet. When the early apostles came over, when Joseph Smith, he whispered into Heber C. Kimball's ear and said, "I'm calling you on a mission to Britain." Heber C. Kimball was completely blown away, but he accepted his call because he was a faithful Latter-day Saint, and he led the apostles to England, and they landed in Liverpool, and they went straight north to Preston, England. And in Preston, at the time when they landed there was elections going on, and there were banners all over that said, "Truth will prevail." And that became the slogan for the missionaries. Everywhere they went, "Truth will prevail" was what they cried, and they declared the truth. And so the England-Manchester mission, it covers from Carlisle, which is all the way up on the northern border of England, and right next to Scotland, and it goes all the way down to northern Wales to towns that are really hard to pronounce, like Dolgelly and Pwllheli, and as well everywhere in between Manchester, Liverpool, Stoke-on-Trent. Those are kind of the main cities within the mission, but there's quite a bit of ground covered. It's probably 5-hour drive from top to bottom, but most of the time you'll be on trains and on buses, public transportation. We also cover the Isle of Man, but one of the things I love the most about the mission is that at one point more members lived in England than they did in Utah. And eventually what happened is the prophet declared, "Everyone gather in Zion." So they all went to the docks at Liverpool, and they hopped on a boat, a lot of boats, and they sailed all the way to America. And most members, especially those in America, probably have ancestors that come from the England-Manchester mission or the neighboring areas as well. And so there's more church history than I can really even get started with. Currently, at the moment, as of 2015, there's 7 stakes in the mission and 7 zones. So it's kind of broken up. Each zone is its own stake, or each stake is its own zone. Each stake would probably have about 7 or 8 wards. There are quite a few branches. Usually those are like either down in the bottom of Wales or up near Carlisle, but things are growing. We are a baptizing mission. That's one thing I love, that some missionaries may have 2 or 3 baptisms on their mission, but quite a few I know had 15 or more, and it really is an opportunity for us to work hard and to get out and declare the gospel. I would say one of the things I really love is the beautiful scenery as well. The highest peak in England and the highest peak in Wales are both in our mission. So we have Snowdonia National Park and what's called the Peak District, which is a national park in England. So it's beautiful. Like, it's amazing. So at the beginning of my mission, I served in Porthmadog, which is in the Chester stake all the way down in Wales. Following Porthmadog, I was sent all the way to the opposite end of the mission to Porthmadog, which is another branch. So both of those are branches. And I went to Carlisle, and Carlisle is in the Preston zone, or Preston district. Following Carlisle, I've got to remember now. Following Carlisle, I went to Macclesfield, which is in the Manchester zone. Following Macclesfield, I went to Hyde, which is also in the Manchester zone. Following Hyde, I went to Lancaster. After Lancaster, I went back to Manchester, where I finished my mission. So, and I was in the Manchester South Ward, so the biggest ward in the Manchester stake. So it's kind of like the Manchester Stake Center, which is where the Manchester South Ward is like the center of everything in our mission. Every transfer meeting you meet there, probably every other month you'll meet at the Manchester South Stake Center for something. Our mission's super diverse. When I left, which was about 8 or 9 weeks ago, there were 40 different nations represented. One of my best friends in the mission was from Sweden. We have a sister from Mongolia. We have basically every nation you can think of. Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand, South America is represented. Many European countries are represented. Germany, France, like a couple Italians, basically everywhere. But the predominant language we speak is English. However, there's also missionaries that are called there that speak Mandarin. And in a lot of the bigger cities such as Liverpool and Manchester, there are always missionaries there that speak Mandarin to target university students coming over from China. And they find a lot of success baptizing them.
Our mission, the number of missionaries increased, just like any of them around the world with the age change. And there was a big surplus. So I think there were about 250 missionaries total when I first came in, and there were about 60 sisters, which decreased a little bit because the age change made it rise for a little bit, but then it kind of fell back between 45 and 50 sisters. And I ended up being a sister train leader for about a year of my mission, and so I got to work really closely with the sisters, and that was a really great opportunity. And they, the great thing with getting more sisters is a lot of areas opened that hadn't had sisters for years. Like in Hull, before we had come, there hadn't been sisters there for like 30 years, and the same in Leeds, and the same in Darlington, and actually the same in all the areas I served in. They hadn't had sisters for a long time. So that was cool to be able to open up those areas because of the increase of sisters. As far as the boundaries go, the England Leeds mission is just parallel to the Manchester mission. So we're in the northeast, whereas Manchester is northwest, and it goes all the way up to the border of Scotland and down to the most south I ever went was Hull, but it goes a little bit further south than that, just south of the Humber River. And like most people, I don't think I had ever heard of Leeds before I got this call. I mean, it's not that exotic of a location, but the only city within my mission that I had really heard of was York. And there's other major cities like Sheffield, Harrogate, Huddersfield, Leeds, obviously, and then up north is some of the other areas. And the up north actually is a really famous castle, which Harry Potter was shot there. And so that's in our mission. Unfortunately, I was never able to get up there, but that's where the movie was shot. So that's kind of fun. And then there's a lot of big estate houses around. There's a lot to see in the mission on P days. And it's fun to get out and see the countryside and some of the culture. For the most part, it's predominantly English, but we did have Mandarin Chinese speakers, Polish speakers, and Slovak speakers. And in Sheffield, there's a huge Slovak branch. And for whatever reason, these people have just flocked to the church, and so they have quite a few of those speakers. But it's funny because a lot of these missionaries that get called to speak these languages get put with English companions. Not always, but and so sometimes if you get called to this mission, you might be in one of those areas. You might be trying to pick up the language a little bit. I know a sister that went home before I did that basically learned Slovak without being called. And there's cases of that with Chinese speakers as well. So there's a lot more going on there with the languages than just English, for sure. England is a very diverse place, especially if you get called to some of the London missions. I'm sure there's even more languages. But those are the ones in England Leeds.
The church has our mission home is right in the center. They have a large chapel there. It's right across it's in South Kensington, but it's right across from the different museums that are there. And it's amazing. It's an amazing building. And they just made a visitor center on the main floor of the Hyde Park Chapel. But our mission home is upstairs. And the church is quite strong. It's growing significantly. It does have its struggles, but it's doing quite well. The Lord really blessing England in general.